Having true olive skin has been one of the hardest parts about establishing my personal style and figuring out colors that really work for me and make me feel really vibrant, which can ultimately dictate what I like to wear and the clothes that I buy, and then also the makeup that I choose to enhance my style with. So a lot of the information that I've found out there is way off base in my experience, and as someone that's actually a living, breathing example of someone with olive skin who has navigated it with a lot of frustration over the years, my hope is to give you some things that can really help you in this video. We're going to go over what olive skin is, some common misconceptions associated with olive skin, how you can determine whether or not you have it yourself, some famous celebrities so that you can find your olive twin skin and get inspiration through that. And then also what I've learned about clothing colors and makeup colors to make you feel your absolute best. So let's get started. As the name suggests, olive skin is characterized by a distinct green cast that can only be achieved by mixing a really strong foundation of blue or a cool undertone with a weaker yellow overtone. And that is really important to understand. So at its core, olive skin is cool. And it's something that I think gets confused a lot. And as someone with an actual olive skin myself, it's been something that I've had to kind of navigate on my own. And really through trial and error, I've been able to confirm that that is in fact true. So keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the video, and I think it will make the whole process a lot easier for you, especially as we try to self-diagnose in a little bit. So that leads really nicely into some common olive skin myths. And the first one that always jumps out to me is that olive doesn't refer to the depth of your skin color, so how light or dark it is, and instead only refers to the overall coloring of your skin. And that is really important because so much information out there, especially very dated information, would lead us to believe that olive skin can only be medium to dark, and that is completely not true. You can be very, very pale and have olive skin. My grandmother, for example, she was very, very pale and had red hair, and she had olive skin. Another very common olive skin myth is that you can be a cool olive or a warm olive. And as we learned at the beginning of the video, you can only achieve the green associated with olive skin by mixing a blue undertone with a yellow overtone. It's very clear to see how when you start actually mixing paint colors, and it's definitely an exercise I recommend to truly understand the composition of colors and certainly how they relate to your skin. So I think that any warmth you may be seeing in an olive skin or in yourself, if you are olive skin, really comes down to your hair and your eye color and how aggressive the yellow overtone of your skin may be, which leads perfectly into the last myth, and that is that noticeably yellow skin automatically has a warm undertone. And that is completely untrue, as we've learned through the last couple points, simply because yellow skin, or skin that is very obviously yellow, already has enough yellow in it. It doesn't need more yellow to balance it, versus a warm undertone, which needs yellow to create that harmony. It doesn't have enough yellow. So by adding a yellow-based color, everything comes to life. Now let's move on to how you can determine whether or not you have olive skin. So let's start with, I think, the easiest one, and that is that you can look at the skin on your body. Now, it's very important to not look at your face when trying to do this because hormones and the season, skin products that you might have on, sunscreen, and other skin conditions like acne and rosacea can certainly alter the color of your face, making it really difficult to actually see the green. So instead, in natural daylight, you should look at your chest, your wrist, your inner upper arm, your stomach, or your inner thigh. Those are areas that are least affected by the sun, so the overtone can't really be muddied at all. They tend to be a little bit more devoid of skin conditions such as acne and rosacea, and it's easier to see the true color. Another thing you can do is compare the skin on your inner arm or your wrist to someone else. Now, when doing this, it is very important to keep a couple things in mind, and the first is that you have to do this in broad natural daylight because indoor lighting can alter how your skin looks. A lot of our indoor outdoor lights are very, very warm, and that is much more pleasing to be present in, but it gives you an inaccurate color read. So it can make your skin look very, very yellow and sometimes even orange. So broad daylight is key. And then the other thing is you want to make sure you're comparing your skin to someone in a similar depth. So don't compare it to someone too much paler or too much darker than you are. And once you have all of those things figured out and you actually compare, it is unbelievable the difference. When I did this, my skin was so noticeably green in comparison to my sister with a warm undertone and my other sister with a cool undertone. Another thing you can do is the foundation test, and that requires getting a warm foundation, something designed specifically for people with a warm undertone. Now make sure it's in the right depth for your skin, so it's not too light or too dark, and then either swatch it on the side of your face or put it all over your face if you're really feeling bold, and then let it sit for about an hour so that it can fully oxidize and fully set. And if you have a true olive skin and you have a cool undertone and a yellow overtone, those colors will mix very unpleasantly with a very warm-based foundation. And you'll end up with a color that is bright orange, kind of muddy, and just looks so off. And you can see from examples that I've used on my own that I'll insert here, it is so incredibly noticeable. And it's something that a lot of us can overlook with olive skin because we may get a warm-based foundation, put it on our skin, and then as we're doing our makeup, our other colors kind of meld with it, causing it to almost work. And that can really misdirect you when it comes to figuring out olive skin. Another pretty good indicator of whether or not you have olive skin is whether you blush naturally and whether or not you have kind of a rosy hue to your cheeks. More often than not, people with a true olive skin will be asked if they're sickly or are you like pale for maybe some health reason? And really that just comes down to your skin being very naturally monotone in a sense. And so you may end up with a little bit of redness from, again, acne, maybe rosacea or allergies. I tend to be prone to that. But your skin won't actually blush naturally, even when you're very embarrassed, and even if you've worked out really aggressively. So if you've ever run into that, it can definitely be an indicator, and also something to keep in mind when trying to choose makeup colors, because if your cheeks don't naturally blush, then keeping everything pretty subdued in that department can make you feel much more comfortable in your makeup and really allow you to enhance your olive skin. And then the last thing that I want to share is the vein test. And I want to specifically point this one out because this one completely threw me for a loop, and I think it can be a good indicator for some of you out there as well. So when determining your undertone, the advice typically is to look at your veins on your wrist and try to determine if you have green veins for warm or blue veins for cool. But if you have olive skin, then you very likely have both. And that can be misinterpreted as neutral. But when it comes down to it, and you really start to examine it, that's actually as a result of the differing colors in your overtone. So using myself as an example, I have a vein on my wrist that goes from my upper arm all the way into the palm of my hand, and literally in the middle it splits. It is blue and then turns into green. And that completely threw me off for so many years until I really started to understand overtone and how it plays with undertone and how you can really make them work really well together. Now let's go over some famous olive skin tones in the celebrity world, and I think this can be really helpful because you can use them as guidance when trying to figure out the colors that are going to feel really good on you and then ultimately makeup colors that will work for you. They have really extensive makeup and hair teams and wardrobe consultants, and you can more often than not, thanks to the internet, Google their makeup from a particular event and then find those exact colors to really play well with your own skin. So I've compiled a list, a very extensive list of celebrities. I will put all of them in the description box, but I'm going to briefly go over a couple of them now in light, medium, and then dark skin so that you can hopefully find your celebrity skin twin and really start navigating it that way, because that was really helpful for me. So let's start off with, I think, the most noticeable olive skin out there, and that is Audrey Tatou. She just jumps out at me so noticeably olive. And I would even go so far as to say that She being chosen to play Coco Chanel was a wonderful choice because I think Coco Chanel may have been olive toned. And the reason I say that is because so many of the colors that exemplify Chanel and the colors that really we associate synonymously with a lot of beautiful French fashion are 100% colors that made her look and feel great. And those were all cool colors that played really beautifully with an olive-toned winter. So I think that is just so helpful. So now going through the rest of the list, we have Julianne Moore, who most people identify as neutral, but I think she's subtly olive, especially if you look in her chest and on her neck. And then also Mila Kunis, I think she's very noticeably olive, and you can certainly see that in a lot of photos from a lot of her early press junkets. When she was put in very warm colors, she looks very, very sallow. And I think that's a perfect indication of how olive skin feels most harmonious in cooler colors. And then of course things that are going to play beautifully with your hair and your eye color. And then also we have Nina Dobrev. I think she is very noticeably olive, but on the slightly darker side. Also Salma Hayek, I think, is a great example. We also have Penelope Cruz, which is a wonderful example of someone with kind of a subtle olive that can almost pull warm. So you've seen her, I'm sure, in some warmer colors, and that is as a result of slightly changing her hair color and her eye color. And then we also have Paz Vega, and then Eva Mendes. I think Eva Mendes is one of the most noticeable middle-of-the-road, slightly tanner olive skin tones because she's so noticeably green when you put her next to other people, especially next to her husband. I also think that Meghan Markle is olive, so is Zoe Kravitz. And then also Padma Lakshmi, I believe, is olive. Same with Ruth Negga. I think she really has an olive skin tone. Frida Pinto, Michelle Rodriguez. And then I also think Tandy Newton is olive. Same with Zoe Saldana and Rihanna. I've heard different interpretations for Rihanna, but I've looked at a ton of photos before I did this, and of course those are hard to really understand since I've never seen her in person. But next to other people and in different colors, I really do think she pulls olive. Getting your base or your foundation color as accurate as possible is the most important thing when it comes to your makeup and the overall appearance in your look. I think that that can be the hardest part of the entire process, but really does make such a big difference. And I've got a couple that I've figured out. I'll put them in the description box if you're similar coloring to me. But once I put that on, it completely transforms how the rest of my makeup looks and can really guide me and give me more flexibility in the colors that I wear and make me feel more vibrant with very, very minimal effort. So it's definitely a hard process. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of research, which I definitely recommend diving into if you think you have olive skin. But then also, don't ever hesitate to mix colors together. It's something that a lot of us have had to do, and I'm sure you can relate to if you have olive skin. Certainly if you have undiagnosed olive skin. And then also, don't ever hesitate to add maybe a little bit of green pigment to your foundation. So things like green color drops and then even a green primer. I've done that in the past and it's worked really, really well. Now, of course, all of that doesn't mean you have to wear foundation, and you can absolutely embrace your bare skin and let it breathe and let it look absolutely gorgeous as it is. And that's something that I definitely recommend. And investing in skincare over foundations and makeup can be a much more enjoyable part of the process for you if you do have a hard to match color. It can alleviate some of the stress and feel like you're in control a little bit more. When it comes to blush, in my experience, olive skin doesn't really blush naturally, so if you've worked out aggressively or you get embarrassed, you may not get that bright pink flush that other skin tones get. And I think that comes down to having a lot of colors all mixing within your own skin color. So it can be something that really stands out in an unpleasant way if you choose the wrong color. So rather than going for a very bright pink or a very, very deep muted pink, I like to stick kind of in the middle of the road, and especially if you're someone with coloring like I have, something that's a little bit dusty, not too dusty, but just slightly softer than a traditional pink color. It tends to work on me a little bit better. Any of those universally flattering pink colors just never work. They always look totally separate from my body and just make me feel like I'm wearing a lot of blush, even if I barely put any on. And then also, if you're incredibly tan and you have a darker complexion and a very noticeable green overcast, and it's something that you can't ignore about your skin, then you might really enjoy wearing something peachy. Something peachy can sometimes play really beautifully with very obvious green. The same thing can be said for eyeshadow. Since the color of your skin and your overtone and your undertone will always compete with any colors you put on top of them, in my experience, it's better to keep everything a little bit softer. But a good rule of thumb is to match the intensity of your eyeshadow to the intensity of your eyes. So if you have really, really dark eyes, wearing a darker shadow can bring a lot of balance to everything, especially if you localize it around your lash line. And then if you have very, very light eyes, bringing some lightness up to your eyes can really, again, make everything look super balanced and not let things compete too aggressively. I also think that, in my experience, olive skin competes pretty negatively with anything too ashy and too white-based and chalky. So I try to steer clear of really icy colors on my eyes, even though icy colors look okay on me in my clothes, which we'll get to in a little bit. And I find that when I have chosen icy, very, very cool colors like that, they tend to look really disconnected. And the last thing in the makeup department is lips. And this can be, I think, the most confusing when it comes to olive skin, especially if you're someone like me and you have very naturally pigmented lips. I'm not wearing any lip color today, I just have lip balm on. And the color of my lips comes through really strong when I have the rest of the colors of my makeup kind of working well together. So it's definitely something to consider for your own makeup approach. And certainly if you are someone on the darker end of the spectrum with very pigmented lips, it can be really hard to find a correct color that doesn't compete too much. So tinted lip balms have become my best friend. But if you are looking for a true color, something kind of middle of the road, relatively pinky but not too over the top pink is going to be perfect. It's going to bring a lot of liveliness to your face and make you look really fresh. And then, much like the blush that I talked about earlier, if you are much tanner than I am and peachy blush looks really beautiful on you, you may really love a peachy lipstick. On me, they pull slightly too warm, but again, just play with it, have fun, and find something that really conveys the message that you want to share with the world. The last thing I want to talk about is clothing colors, and I specifically put this at the end of the video because I think once you have your makeup colors sorted and you find things that are truly in harmony with your own unique olive skin, then you have a lot more flexibility in colors and you'll have less of that jarring reaction when you put on a very high contrast or a very warm or a very cool color onto your skin. It will feel more in balance with you and it gives you a lot more freedom. So I will use myself as an example, and I've found that by far, the most valuable information to navigate my color palette has been to match the depth or intensity and undertone of my own personal coloring. And that has given me a palette that I feel really, really good in. Now, once I've had those colors sorted, which are black, very crisp white, and then also things like that beautiful light blue like I'm wearing today, and then colors like navy, once I have that base sorted, within reason, I can wear warmer colors and really bring out the warmth of the yellow that's found in my skin without feeling sallow. So I have a couple camel colors and some beigey colors that I like to wear, and I've specifically chosen those because they're slightly warm, but they do have a cooler base than some of the alternatives on the market. Along those same lines, I recommend matching your color palette to your most noticeable feature. So maybe that's your hair color or your eye color. If you have light eyes, for example, and your eyes are very big and they're very noticeable when people look at you, then wearing colors in the same color as your eye color will just make them look that much better and allow your whole body to look very in harmony and your color choices to feel very deliberate, which I love about style. I think anytime you wear something that shows you truly know yourself and you know what you want to convey to the world, it's a really beautiful message to give. So I encourage you to figure that out for yourself. And I hope that this video helped shed some light on olive skin. And if you have it yourself, I hope that now you're really certain that you have it. Or if you were kind of wishy-washy, maybe now you know you don't have olive skin. And like always, definitely feel free to comment down below with anything you've learned and any of your takeaways, because I love when everyone can help each other in the comments, and I think there are a lot of olive skins out there and we can certainly learn from everyone. And like always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.